I've talked to you guys before about what's going on with Venezuela. They're talking about invading. They're talking about doing a ground invasion at this point. How do we get here? Previously, they were doing these drone strikes, right? They were looking at all of these boats off the coast of Venezuela. Some people are saying they're fishing boats. The Trump administration said they're narco terrorists, whatever that means. And they were bombing these boats, right? And then people started asking, well, what is the evidence that these people were terrorists? Or what is the evidence that these people were drug traffickers? And what did the Trump administration say? Because I said so. That was their answer. I said that they're dangerous criminals. I said that we're having another war against drugs when the first one failed tremendously. So the Trump administration said, we declare war on Venezuela. The government and their president, Maduro, is a cartel leader, and he's allowing them to bring drugs into the U.S. So they killed like 80 something people by now, just by drone strikes. Zero trials, zero evidence. They didn't go on these boats like pirates and start seizing stuff. They didn't send the Coast Guard out to show us the evidence that these people were carrying drugs. They just started bombing people. Now, you guys might have remembered that video that some people over in Congress did, where they were saying, hey, don't give up the ship. Don't follow any illegal orders. It turned into an entire travesty. But this situation, I don't know if it's directly tied to the video, but the sentiment of the video is about situations like this, where the Trump administration has authorized to be bombing people, even though we don't have specific evidence linking them to a crime, right? We haven't presented any drugs. We haven't presented any arrests. We haven't presented anybody that has actually confirmed, even over in Venezuela, that these people that were being bombed were in a cartel. So we talked about the fallout of that video before, but let's go ahead and check out this video from CNN where they're talking about this entire Venezuela situation to the point where we're about to do a ground assault, right? The guy that said he was the peace president, Trump, who claimed he's going to start no new wars, is starting war with Venezuela. And a lot of people are saying it's about oil. Trump is saying that it's about narco terrorism. Here's CNN.
Details about one of those deadly U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. Sources tell CNN the U.S. military carried out a follow-up strike on September 2nd after becoming aware of survivors in the water. The sources tell us that prior to the strike, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth had ordered the military to ensure everyone on board was killed. People briefed on the, quote, double tap strike say they're concerned that it could.
See, this is what they're talking about. You can't have witnesses. You can't have anybody to testify if there's nobody alive. That's the issue. That's the issue all of those Congress people were talking about. And to come out for this guy that keeps trying to make himself this big he renamed the shit the Department of War, right? He keeps trying to make himself like some what's the dude's name? Rambo or something. You're not that, Pete Hegseth. I know you want to fashion yourself as that. You want to look at yourself as like some sort of macho man. You are not. Every time you speak, you make yourself look more and more like an ass. You look more and more like a clown. But as it's being reported by CNN, he said straight out of his mouth, hey, don't leave no survivors. That sounds like the type of stuff that actual cartels do. While you're blaming people over in Venezuela, saying, oh, these are the cartels, we have to take them out. They're carrying drugs and doing all of this illegal stuff. The orders that you're giving, or at least what is being reported that you're giving, sounds like actual criminality, right? But here we go. Let's see what else he had to say.
Violate the law of armed conflict, which prohibits the execution of an enemy combatant who is taken out of the fight due to injury or surrender. Now, since September, as you're seeing on your screen here, the U.S. military has carried out at least 21 known strikes on suspected drug trafficking boats, killing at least 83 people. Officials have also acknowledged, though, not knowing the identities of everyone on board before they are struck. And this development comes as President Trump says the U.S. military will soon begin land strikes on alleged drug trafficking networks in Venezuela. I want to bring in Beth Stanner,
Please, somebody explain to me how that's America first. I understand that they're trying to fight this new front to the war on drugs, but it's been reported multiple times that this is not the biggest supplier of drugs that come to the U.S., right? So how is it that we're saying, oh, we need to combat drugs, but we're not going? They said they have all this fentanyl coming from China. Why are we not going to China? Why are we not going to Peru and Colombia and all of these places? Why are we saying, oh, we got to get Venezuela? If that's not the major supplier, right? But we are talking about their oil that they have, you know, all roads are kind of pointing there. So, don't be fooled by all of this. The mainstream media keep telling you, oh, well, Venezuela is doing this and that, or they're bringing so many drugs, or they had these people in the water. It's been reported these boats that they're supposedly carrying drugs in that are being bombed are basically like speed boats. It's like you taking a jet ski over to Florida and like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go drive to Jamaica. I'm gonna go down to Jamaica. No, the hell you're not. You're not gonna make it all the way from Florida to Jamaica on a jet ski. That's the equivalent of the journey that they're saying these people are making from Venezuela. They're on a speedboat. There's no evidence that they're doing what the Trump administration claims that they're doing, but they're being bombed anyway. And like Pete Hegseth said, don't leave any survivors.
CNN national security analyst and former deputy director of national intelligence. Thank you for taking the time. I just want to start with getting your reaction to the reporting we have here that double tap strikes were ordered to make sure everybody on board was killed.
Right. If this is true,
Yeah.
it's really shocking.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this in the context of Ukraine. And right now, Russian soldiers are being accused of war crimes, and their cases in the International Court of Justice because they're killing prisoners, Ukrainian armed combatants who are prisoners, and they're killing them instead of, keeping them as prisoners. So, here we have an example of an actual war and war crimes accusation. So here, what does this do, in terms of U.S. moral authority? There's reporting this week of Israel, of IDF soldiers killing Palestinian prisoners, Hamas prisoners. How can we go to Israel and say, like, you shouldn't have done that? Or Russia?
Yeah.
See, that's the issue. The U.S., because of all of the bullshit that we do, or the bullshit that we fund for other people to do, we don't have the moral authority in the world to really tell anybody anything, right? We used to have the money, power, and influence to say, yo, you can't do that, or you can do that, or we're going to hold you accountable. We don't have that anymore because we do our own bullshit and then nobody's held accountable for it. So how can you hold a mirror up to somebody else and say, look what you did, when the stuff that I'm doing, I can't even be held on the hook for by anybody? So that's the type of situation that we've been in that situation for a long time, right? What's good for, you would think what's good for the goose is good for the gander, but when you had the money, power, and influence, you had the leverage to tell other people what to do. But then when you are not living up to that, and we have a bunch of inflation, our dollar is losing its value. We're losing our foothold on the world year by year. And people can say, oh, it's because of Biden. I don't really care who it's because of. I just hate that it's happening. And then we have we're not looked at as a upstanding country like we used to. And this situation with Venezuela, it's only exacerbating that, right? We can't just go and start taking people out and saying, oh, well, they did this, but there's no evidence, there's no trial, it's no survivors. We're double tapping people. It's ridiculous. All for oil. That's what they're saying. It's all for oil.
This arena we've been talking a lot about Venezuela on a number of fronts. Obviously, there are these efforts that the administration says they're going after drug trafficking boats. There is the not so subtle pushes against Nicolas Maduro that President Trump has been leading. But the president also says that land action would now be part of the administration's effort to deter Venezuelan drug traffickers. I just wonder what you think about that threshold.
Yeah, because that's really America first. If that stuff was getting to the U.S., we have entities to look into that. We don't need to go out in the middle of the ocean and bomb people. But what do I know, right? I'm just a guy on YouTube. He's the president, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of War. It's the gayest name I ever heard in my life. But, they're privy to what's going on and they get to make decisions and don't have to be accountable for them. Trump never has to be accountable for them. Pete Hegseth doesn't have to be accountable for them until the next administration. So, he's living like it's a free-for-all right now.
Being crossed here.
It's a big threshold,
Yeah.
right? I mean, right now we're in international waters, but when you're talking about strikes in a sovereign country against, these are drug traffickers, bad people, but it is still in another country, and so there usually has to be a justification, and there is a process for that. You can get authorization for use of military force from Congress.
No. She said that there usually has to be a justification for going out and bombing people. You always need to have a justification. You can't just bomb people with indiscriminately at all under any circumstance. That is called murder, regardless of who does it. If you don't have a reason, if you don't go to Congress and say, hey, we need to declare war against this country, it is, by definition, illegal.
That helps on that, but there's an entire international legal system too, and that's what people are worried about. Kind of in this context of the video that the Democratic senators put out recently about defying illegal orders, and the question about whether people who are conducting them could be subject to being prosecuted.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot involved here. I do wonder, though, whether President Trump actually will do it, or whether we're just kind of in this game of chicken. I was thinking about this because he has this quote that he said in another context about, waiting until the very last minute to make a decision about conducting such an activity, because, in war, things change. That's the quote. And so, sometimes we don't really know where we're either up to that line of the last minute, or whether we're still in this kind of pressure campaign trying to see if something will happen inside Venezuela, whether this kind of pressure will generate activity to oust Maduro.
Well, I was going to.
Of course. What we're trying to do is provoke Venezuela. Of course. Like, a blind man could see that. If we go and we start drone striking people and we start telling them, hey, we're going to position our ships right off of your coast, or we start using language like, oh, we might do a ground invasion. Okay, we're going to do a ground invasion. We're basically trying to incite people. The same thing that I said about Trump sending National Guard troops on the streets during the summer. Like, you're trying to incentivize the public to retaliate against them in some sort of way. Not like the way that happened, on Wednesday. Of course, that was a tragedy. But I'm talking about like early into the summer when all of this was being ramped up. And it's the same thing that's going on with Venezuela. We're looking for a reason. That's like when you're in school and you tell somebody, like, you're pushing them, like, I dare you to hit me. If you hit me first, be like, wait, you're not even acknowledging the fact that you pushed me and instigated something with me in the first place. So I think that that's where we are with Venezuela. We're egging them on for whatever reason that it is, whether it is actually about drugs, whether it's about getting some oil, whatever it is, we're trying to instigate a situation with them to retaliate, and then we can lean on them with the full force of the U.S. military, right? All our intelligence assets, all our money, all our resources. We're trying to get to that point so that we can get to whatever the end game is. It's clear. It's clear as day. So that's where we're going to go ahead and table that. And if you guys have any thoughts about us ramping up to go to war with Venezuela and instigating this situation in my book, then please drop your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know what you think.